Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of LabTalks. My name is Ben Putley. I'm the host and CEO of co-founder of Alchemy. Today, it's my pleasure to be joined by Sherrick. Sherrick is the Group Director of Audience and Data Strategy at Initiative. That's a very brief introduction, Sherrick. Why don't you give a slightly longer one and kind of what you've done so far and kind of let everyone know who you are, really.
For sure. So, lovely to be here. Sherrick, Audience and Data Strategy Lead for Europe within Initiative. And effectively, my role is to try and encourage and develop the role of audience within our client and brands. So the real power of that is being done by data.
Yep.
That's kind of the effective link that brings strategy through to planning, through to activation. And so my team is really focusing in terms of really being that core red thread right the way through. I have a wide background in digital media. So I started off actually in ad ops, which was fundamentally the best thing I ever did.
Nice.
Really get to grips, get under the skin of it all. And then I kind of worked my way through all the activational channels, performance media, digital director for a number of really huge brands. And then had a little stint on the business director side, actually being account management side.
Yeah.
I loved it, interesting. Didn't really enjoy the X's and O's of the finance process, and then thought, let me just back out into digital.
Stuff.
Back into the fun stuff. So no, glad to be here. And really exciting time for us in the industry. And I think, it's the right place to be. And really interested to see where this year goes.
Cool. So I want to talk a bit more about like audiences and data, because that is one of the kind of great things about programmatic is that you can be quite specific about the audience you're targeting versus like outdoor, for example. So it'd be cool to understand how you Initiative think about that and kind of how because I bet your brands must have a very varied audience. So how do you think about getting specific audiences for brands, but then having a coherent strategy across all of the group, if that makes sense?
Yeah, no, that's really good point, actually. And it's probably been the one thing I would say that's developed the most within Initiative in the last few years is we've just launched and we've started rolling out a brand new audience model or blueprint, you could call it, which fundamentally focuses on long-term audiences, exactly like you mentioned around brand portfolios, halo audiences, those sort of things, where one kind of campaign impacts the other. But these growth audiences, we call them, are more your long-term audiences. And effectively, they are driven by the brand's consideration, awareness of the brand, love for the brand. We call that fame at Initiative. And then also driven by kind of the audience that they want to lean into, right? So if you've got a brand like a bit of a legacy brand where, it's very much leaning into the boomer audience, kind of really an outdated audience today, but they want to lean into more of a Gen Z audience, then that helps drive the sort of audience pools they should be fishing in, but also actually more importantly, the ones they should probably ignore.
Okay.
And then from there, that's when we get it really into the X's and O's under the skin of those audiences where programmatic and biddable channels and addressable channels start really playing up, where we deep dive into those audiences, identify unique triggers, signals, behaviors, interests, attitudes, those sort of things that really help to identify one audience from another.
Yeah.
We actually quite like looking away from the demographics of audiences.
Okay,
so move away from ages and more focused on the behaviors and characteristics.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
And like you said, that's really where platforms like programmatic really come to the fore, right? Where through ideally, but in-platform audiences, you've got first-party data which you can ingest, amazing data partners and vendors with such incredible, unique data sources from publisher, first-party data, things like that we can really start leaning into. And instead of kind of talking the talk from a strategic standpoint, we can now walk the walk from an activational standpoint. And that's where things are starting to get really exciting for us, and we've seen the most value come. And I think it's one of the areas which we'll get into this in a little bit, where yes, third-party cookie deprecation is going to impact quite heavily, but it's also a time when we can be a little bit more innovative as well, right? And that's kind of how we think about audiences. And then the final piece, sorry, I forgot, was around in-market audiences.
Okay,
so then you start thinking about, right, who's in market today?
Yeah.
Who's searching for our brand, for our product, for our service today, and how do we capture them? And that's really when you get into the paid searches and lower down funnel, kind of in programmatic, contextual programmatic solutions. But yeah, it's a really interesting model. It's done wonders for us so far.
Yeah, okay.
And I think at the very least, it's really helped brands to understand the short and long game when it comes to targeting.
Has that expertise helped you in pitching for new work, kind of that understanding of a model? Because I know there's retail media is becoming a thing. Yep. And I guess being able to tie all of those together must make that very attractive to work with an agency like Initiative. So you must have a key role in that regard.
Yeah, look, it's about simplifying the complex, right? Yeah. For a lot of these brands. And I think one of the things that all of us are completely aware of is that no matter how good a brand might look from the outside, from like our day-to-day usage of a brand, on the inside, there are so many silos. Everyone's got their own KPIs. Everyone's got their own goals. You know, let's be real. Clients want to get promoted, right? Yeah. They want to make money.
Yeah.
So therefore, they've got one thing in mind, which is to hit their short-term goals. And fundamentally, that's where a solution and a partner like Initiative, where we've come in and really helped to, like I said, simplify what can be quite a complex ecosystem of different audiences and strategies and brands and products, especially in retail, and just help kind of deliver it in a way that is much more tangible for the CMO right at the top.
Right, okay.
But then also the campaign leads right at the bottom.
That sounds tough.
Yeah. A
lot of number crunching, I imagine, involved in that.
A lot. Yeah.
And which channels have you seen kind of expand? Because you've got a lot of experience in media. I think I started in one of the years of mobile, and there was a lot around at that time, kind of device ID and ad formats. So I think that with Apple's moves to kind of take that away, as it were, and then kind of less innovation around formats, it seems like every format's been done now. Kind of what are you thinking about outside of those two kind of channels, as it were, to really innovate and look at how you can serve brands in the future?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I tend to agree. I'm less interested in the formats and more interested in the time and place more than anything else. If I'm honest with you, I think, like you've said, and I think there's plenty of studies that show that creative is the most important, if not second or third most important thing in terms of driving action from customers, right? But if you're not getting them in the right time and place, not finding that right customer, then there's no point. So I think for me, the real innovation comes in that space. And like I mentioned, with the deprecation of third-party cookies, I think there's going to be some real kind of under the hood innovation needed. Yeah. Which, you know, even for me, some of that will go over my head, right? But there's going to be a lot of that sort of stuff going on. But I think there'll also be some strategic innovation where I almost think we're going to start looking forward to the past, where we're going to start looking at what did we used to do in the past? How did brand advertising used to change the minds and hearts of people? And actually, even in the way that we measure performance and measure success, do we need to go back to the old way of looking at things, like long term rather than thinking about short term? And I think that's where innovation is really going to come to the fore.
Yeah, I think you made me think of like TV upfronts there. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're buying a TV show over a period of time and then kind of fitting your message in that. And I think that probably does make a lot of sense for a publisher. I think that sometimes when they're looking to monetize inventory, they do have an auction on page, but because there's so much available, it can quite often be a race to the bottom for a publisher, which just means I was actually reading an article around the challenges that DSPs have with deduplicating bids that originate from a particular page. And one way in particular we've been thinking about that is there's a underused field in OpenRTB, which is the transaction ID. When we validate a transaction on Alchemy, we create a transaction hash or read as transaction ID. So I think that us being able to attach that to a bid request, send it to an agency like Initiative, I imagine would help a lot in just understanding what exactly it is that you're bidding on, and maybe take a slower approach, if that makes sense, to the way that you're buying it. Because I think sometimes there can be a race to like spend the money in a period of time, but maybe sometimes it's better to like spend the money over a period of time on the right person and spend slightly less or slightly more when you find that individual. And I think just a few more data points would just be a game changer for a lot of buyers. Yeah.
And actually you lean into a really interesting kind of conversation, right? Because I think one of the things which have got a lot of marketers really, really excited is the number of data points to measure something by, right? Which is also caused a lot of issues because you then start getting into that conversation around effectiveness and efficiency. And I think what we've basically found is that we're getting briefs around efficiency KPIs, not around effectiveness KPIs. Whereas, and then what's happening is when you've got new data points like transaction IDs being available, it's now understanding how does that fit in with everything else that we've got. And I think you're right. I think what it's trying to say is we just need a much more considered approach to the way that we bid, we optimize, we activate. We need to test and learn in the right way and use partners like yourself who are able to give us the right information in order to make the right decisions. Because I think what we're finding is, like I said, when clients have short-term goals and, KPIs in order to get promoted, we are just facilitating that conversation and we're not helping anyone but kind of their reports, right? And anyone can do that. You can optimize to the bottom, do whatever you want, but fundamentally you're deduplicating, you're cannibalizing your own media. You're not being efficient for the brand. And I think that's where us working in partnership with partners like yourself, as well as kind of training that new mental muscle with clients, we can get to a place where, we're getting a classic term, getting more bang for the buck, right? That's kind of what we need to do.
Yeah, I'm known to thrash an analogy, so bear with me while I thrash this one. But when you talk about that, I kind of think about there's this idea of like survivorship bias. And I don't know if you've seen it, where it's like there's that picture of a plane and it has like, they were looking at where the plane had been hit by, I think it's in World War II, by a bullet and then landed. What really they needed to see was where it had been hit but didn't make it back, because that was obviously like the critical damage that meant that the plane wasn't able to land again. And I think that one of the things that we are able to do, because I mean, fundamentally, all we've done is, rather than have centralized servers that we have to manage, we have a decentralized network of validators that are willing to take on some of the cost of maintaining an exchange, which means there's no limitations for us in the amount of data you can send to a buyer-like initiative, which can be, okay, this is where you won, this is how it performed when your bid was successful. But I think what could be quite interesting to really jump into is like, this is what happened when you lost. Like, was it just down to the price? Was it that ad format had particularly high bid density, so you shouldn't have been bidding there anyway because it's super competitive, and maybe it'd been better to try video instead of display? Or just like looking at the entire picture, otherwise you can end up, without really knowing, kind of creating your own confirmation bias, and that can be damaging when you're looking at kind of broadening the amount of people that see your message and ad. And I think particularly, I think about, again, the AWS campaign that we ran with you, which was because you were getting more media for your money, the video completion rate increased. And I think that, to me, logically, is like more people that may have been interested in AWS saw the ads to finish the video. It's kind of like common sense, really, when you think about it like that. But I think more of different kind of data points must be valuable. I guess I've missed something there.
And the important thing is the right data points, right? And like, I hate to keep coming back to this, but it's just about education. And I think what you will find is, when it comes to like what we're doing at Initiative, to be really, like at Initiative, we're really on the march to try and retrain everyone at Initiative around a number of different digital subjects, but in particular around measurement.
Okay.
Right? And I think, like I've kind of mentioned, effectiveness and efficiency are two of the broader terms that are thrown out, and you can't do one without the other. But fundamentally, whenever you get a brief on the table, you should always be, the thing that should be front of mind should be about business value, business growth. That should be the number one thing. Right. And I think from our perspective, like you said, that analogy that you kind of brought out, which I did get.
Nice. Okay, cool.
I think that
sometimes I Michael Scott them a bit, so
I definitely got that one. No, I think exactly like you said, it's not just showing about what you've gained, but what you could have lost. Right. And that is such a powerful story in the world of marketing, because marketing, for whatever reason, is always under the microscope. But we know marketing works. There's it doesn't matter. Marketing works, right? And I'll put my life on the line.
Yeah, I think there's I saw like it may have been on LinkedIn or something, but it was like some people don't believe that marketing works, and they lose their cat, and they put a picture up on the lamppost, and someone's like, "I found your cat," and you're like, "Holy shit, it works."
But that's exactly it, right? But then it's always under the microscope, and mainly from the finance teams, right? And so that's the conversation we tend to have with brands is when they're saying, you know, we this year we need to hit our same goals, but you've got 20% less budget.
Yeah.
The conversation is like, look, it's not realistic. That's not realistic. And all of a sudden then the KPIs start changing. The data points that they start looking at start changing. And you start losing track of what your long-term ambitions and goals are for the brand. So I think for me, it's around education around effectiveness and efficiency. It's bringing new measurement tactics into play. Like I said, almost taking a little bit of a step back to the past where you know, incrementality measurement starts becoming much more powerful. It's things like A/B testing, holdout groups, right? Real simple stuff like that, you know, have been given a bit of a bad name when, you know, you've got personal identifiable information out there and out and all this. When it's actually, you know, sometimes the simplest measurement tactics are the best.
Yeah.
And
Makes sense.
I think that's what I think working with partners like yourself will absolutely be able to help us with, because in the programmatic space, it is complex.
Yeah,
right?
It's
incredibly complex. And you can't 100% guarantee that you can have perfectly held holdout groups in all spaces. But if we can work with a partner who's able to then verify every single one of those impressions, that's one thing that we're not getting at the moment, right? And if we can get that, and then, oh, by the way, we can also see how they've interacted, where they've engaged, what they've done. I'm not going to get into viewability and attention just yet, but I think all that sort of stuff builds such a nice picture for us. And oh, by the way, by serving this ad via programmatic to this person, actually we saw an incremental lift of X, Y, Z. All of a sudden, that's a very simple conversation. That pats away the finance teams, that brings you more budget. And at a wider marketing level, that becomes a lot more digestible conversation to have.
I think it's like as it often is, but like the greatest strength of programmatic advertising is the volume of data points that you can see. But then equally, its greatest weakness is the volume of data points that you can see, because you're not held to the same standard with an outdoor ad. You know, like if you put one up in Piccadilly Circus, you're like, we're pretty sure that it was seen by people that would be interested in brand X, but we're not 100% sure. Whereas you can give to the impression the number of people that saw your brand that were interested in it. But more people should have seen it. And that has all that kind of dissonance is kind of funny to me, but
look, I think you're exactly right. And let's be honest, we can spin any story. Right. You can. There's enough data points that you can find gold in rubbish, right? It's literally how it works. And I think what we are aiming to do as an initiative, as part of the, you know, agency industry or the advertising industry, is to kind of add a bit more education back into it. I think about advertising in much more simpler terms. Was our ad effective? It was our campaign effective? And those effectiveness measurements should be seen not only in silo of the campaign, but also what was the halo impact of us running that advertising on the other parts of your business, on the other parts of your brand. And look, I'm a massive fan of MMM, right? Media mix modeling. It gives you a good oversight or a good indication in terms of how media or advertising or, you know, marketing spend is impacting your business, which unfortunately today there aren't solutions out there that do a good enough job or a better job.
It's tricky. I think that, like, on your point on education, I think with your background in ad ops, like, you understand how the pipes work. And I think that is like a real edge when you're looking to plan these kind of campaigns, because you understand how it all kind of interlinks with each other. And I think that is cool, because then if you understand exactly how point A connects to point B, you can see how it can connect slightly more securely, or do you know, use that analogy, but like, that is very cool. And I think not enough people understand exactly how an ad goes from a creative here all the way through to a publisher's page, and kind of the hops in between, which some might say are unnecessary, myself included. But I think that even understanding that just helps you extract more value from that supply chain, as it were.
Yeah, 100%. And these are live conversations we're having with clients right now, right? And I think we've spoken about this before. Programmatic is always under scrutiny, always under scrutiny. And it has, in many cases, been a bit of a black box for many years. But, you know, as our clients are becoming more educated, as we're starting to see more agency people go client side, we're getting the right questions, right? Yeah. We're getting pushed in the right way. It's not as easy as just plugging something into a DSP and just hoping it hits, and then, you know, like I said, being able to spin the results to tell you what they mean.
Yeah, and I think on like if you kind of take one step back from like the coalface of planning ads, like programmatic advertising funds the internet essentially, right? Like that is what it's there to do, which is where we all get all of our information all of the time. And I was writing some tweets yesterday just around paywalls and how they generally have like a bad impact on traffic. Makes sense. You can't access content anymore. As happens, there's always one article that you want to read and it's behind a paywall. It's real pain. And I think that if you really nail it and you can provide more value to each kind of constituent part of that value exchange, like you, the brand that pays for the content, and ultimately the publisher that is creating the content that's paid for by advertising, and then the user that reads it, and then ultimately you're trying to impact what they think about a brand or how they want to purchase it or whatever it may be. I think it has like there is a bigger responsibility on the industry that I think sometimes can be forgotten, that it's like we're helping pay for the internet, which means that everyone can access all the information all of the time. And
I almost feel like there's a bit of a fear factor in the supply chain, that it's like, oh no, if we don't, you know, get some sort of money for doing X, Y, Z, then, you know, marketers are going to spend less. And it's actually perhaps the opposite. I think as kind of working with yourselves, where you start cleaning up that supply chain, start getting more media impressions for your spend. I think there's fear that, oh no, then, you know, brands will just spend less because they're still getting the same results. Ironically, they won't. Like they really, really won't. And if you're, again, measuring in the right way and showing them actually, you know, you're incrementally driving X, Y, Z, they will spend more. They will always find more money to spend more, and it will fund the internet, and everyone will get their fair share.
Yeah, I think so. And it's like it does, because really what happens where we take such a low fee, our bids are more competitive. Like, so that means that you're able to win the audiences that you're looking for. And I think that what you can do around that time, and again, this is quite an old school way of buying media, but if you wanted like 100% share of voice at a period of time, I mean, the example I always think of is like let's say a bookmaker at halftime of the 3 o'clock kickoffs. If they could spend and be really competitive in an auction, they could get bets, odds, whatever it was, in front of people for 15 minutes. And that's probably where they're going to get a lot of action during the game or at halftime individually. And I think that, again, just by making that more efficient, it gives you an older school way of like, it's almost like a double page spread, you know, like of buying media at a certain point to deliver on KPIs to make it more efficient. And then being made more efficient becomes more effective because you're showing the right ad to the right person at the right time.
100% agree. And I think one of the things that we've certainly found is when you're having the right conversations with clients around this, right, they are absolutely leaning in. They are absolutely leaning into it. And they start thinking more, classic word, omni-channel about everything, you know, because, you know, programmatic in the past has never got its fair share or respect. Even though there's constant spend, it's funding the internet, it's never got its fair share in terms of performance, and mainly down to last click, right? It's always been the case. And I think one of the things that we're really leaning into from a measurement standpoint at Initiative is audience-centric measurement. Everything is around audience. And if you think about audience-centric measurement at the moment, in most cases, everything is last click. Everything's search is probably getting, I love search. I'm not going to bag it, but it's probably getting inflated 4 to 10x performance, right? Than actually what it is. That's okay if it's understood. And if you also think about the other channels of play, where it becomes a real issue is when brands are starting to move money into search because of that point, right? And there have been quite a few studies out there that have shown that there is almost an opportunity miss of 30 to 40% if you move your budgets based on kind of bottom, like ROAS, for example, right? So if you just put all of your money into the most effective, efficient ROAS targets, paid search being one of them, and whatever affiliates might be another, you're going to lose so much more opportunity up the funnel and across that audience journey. So for us, that's one of the things we're really focusing on, is really whenever we talk about measurement frameworks, we talk about it through our kind of fame and flow framework, which is right the way from that first impression, that first engagement with the brand, right to the bottom. We consider every single touch point when we think about this. We've got new tools that we're rolling out right now, which are effectively omni-channel. It's like this mix of multi-touch attribution and MMM in a digital world, which is really offering great kind of great feedback to our clients, but also internally when our teams are optimizing towards holistic performance across digital channels. We're seeing really good performance increases. But we're starting to get to that space where we're just trying to educate people that it is an audience-centric measurement approach rather than just a channel-centric. But I think one of the things that around saving money and where that money goes, we are, as I mentioned, we're finding that when clients are really leaning in, they're happy to spend the money. They're happy to put the money into it. As long as they're getting the measurement solutions that are giving them business value and business effectiveness rather than campaign efficiency.
Okay. So I think we talk a bit about KPIs. Like I think when you measure it, you obviously get a ton of data. Like how do you go about setting a KPI for a particular ad campaign, and like I mean, obviously they vary, but what do those look like typically?
Yeah, sure. So in today's world, if you take any brands kind of sending over a brief, in most cases, it will be pretty clear whether it's kind of a kind of upper funnel campaign, mid funnel campaign, or lower funnel campaign.
Yeah.
Right. And there'll be associated KPIs to that. Upper funnel consideration awareness, mid funnel traffic to site kind of vibes, video engagements. And then bottom of the funnel, it's like conversions, ROAS, ROI, that sort of thing. Right. So pretty straightforward. But so again, we're trying to train that new mental muscle, that new challenger mindset when it comes to measurement, to go back to clients and say, okay, fine, awesome, great. But actually, what else have you got running at the same time? What else is in the market? What else is going on with your business? If we look at this in silo of a lower funnel campaign, we could absolutely optimize the hell out of it. And we could get you that ROI. We could buy the cheapest channels, the dark arts of biddable activation, and we can get you those numbers. But actually, what is it doing for your business? So these are the questions that we're starting to probe. And fundamentally, what we're then starting to get to is we've got campaign KPIs, we've got channel KPIs, and we'll let our amazing activation teams go away and do what they do. But from like an account and planner and data strategist perspective, we start looking at the wider ecosystem of that client. Okay. And so if you take a bank, like, and it might be like a mortgages campaign. Absolutely. We'll get as many people to sign up to get a mortgage. However, let's look at everything else that's going on. If we can, let's look at the impact of serving of this credit card campaign we're running at the same time on your mortgages campaign. What is the impact of that loan campaign having it? And so we're looking at all of those other things and asking the right questions. But one of the things that, again, we are really pushing with our clients is, are you running MMM? Have you got some sort of econometric modeling going on that can look at the wider ecosystem here? And if not, of course, we can help you out with that. But it's just being considered and asking the right questions and challenging in the right areas.
I guess I can imagine that becomes a frustration when you do just get siloed into whatever that brand thinks that you're good at. Whereas they would just get much more value out of you if they kind of let you in a bit more to exactly how they're thinking about everything, because there's obviously certain times of the year or certain events that make a ton of sense. And if you can't see how they're being planned, you're kind of going in again without all the information and then accidentally creating some confirmation bias. And
there you go. Yeah.
I think when you're talking about search, it's like, just from my own experience, I often like see an ad, and just with the way I use Google Chrome, the way it's set up is that I'll see an ad and then I'll search it in my URL bar and then click the article. And then if I did purchase it, it's like search delivered that. It's like, it delivered me to the website, but what delivered me to the sale was seeing that bit of branded content or watching that video, whatever it was. And that link is like broken somehow. And I think that must be a huge challenge for you.
It's a huge challenge and a huge frustration as well, because you hit the nail on the head, right? It's like, what led me to do that? What led me to do that? What led me to do that? And those questions aren't being asked in the right way, right? And also the other thing you've got to consider is the lag of advertising. And probably, again, paid search, not bagging it again, but paid search is probably one of the only ones where within a week you're probably making, you could probably accurately attribute back to that particular click. Whereas if you look at display advertising, again, that could be a week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Again, depending on the brand, I'm generalizing here. Video, even longer.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're reporting on a weekly basis, optimizing on a weekly basis, that's kind of scary stuff, right? Because then you're not giving each ad, each creative, each channel, it's fair dues.
Yeah.
And that is another issue. And that's, again, another reason why when I've worked on really hardcore performance campaigns and brands, I've been very concerned about optimizing week on week on week on week, especially when running programmatic video advertising at the same time, for that very reason. And it's something, and it's not easy. It's not easy to manage. It's not easy to understand. And unless you have somehow got some view tracking in place or view reporting in place that allows you to see that, or some MTA in place that allows you to attribute back to the right touch points, it's very difficult. And so it's almost, with measurement, you've got to take a bit of a leap of faith. You've got to take a bit of a leap of faith with performance media, and also respect each channel for what it's trying to do in the audience's journey.
Yeah. And I think you have a difficult job. Like many years ago, I was helping a company run a performances install-based network, and a lot of that was done on Skype. I think if I opened up my old Skype account, there'd be people sending me offers and tracking links and all sorts. And I would start off with an offer for an app like Candy Crush, let's say. And if I used to sit there for an afternoon and I would send it out, and then I could see it came all the way back to me with like a percentage taken off it, where people trying to find inventory to deliver it. And I'm like, that's my tracking link, but it's the CPI is about 40% cheaper than what I was offering. So it was like, it's tricky. I think that it's where really, and again, we very much put our hat in the blockchain camp, as I'm sure you're aware, but one of the coolest things about Ethereum, for example, is Etherscan, in my opinion. Like every single transaction on the Ethereum network is written to Etherscan, which is a website. It's none of it is personally identifiable unless there's these things called ENS domains, which you can attach to a wallet. So like you could have benputley.eth, and if someone has that, they can send you Ethereum if they wanted to, and you attach it to a wallet. But aside from that, every new wallet that is created is immediately indexed, and then you can start to look at what's happening in that wallet. And then we hope there is a way in the future to have that wallet passed in the bid request. So you could see, right, okay, this wallet has done, I don't know, $10,000 worth of transactions. It might be fair to say that person is a high net worth individual. Or if someone, there's a, I think it's called Travala or a T something, but a travel booking site that allows you to pay in crypto.
Oh yeah.
So like if you'd seen that website or that wallet had interacted with that website, you could be like, okay, that might be interesting for an airline brand or a hotel brand or travel insurance, you know? And I think that presents quite a nice, transparent way to do some of the behavioral targeting that comes with third-party cooking now that might disappear with technology. That I think last year there was a 43% growth in Ethereum wallets. It went from 71 million to 126 million or something like that kind of number. And I think as that, it's quite nice that the third party is disappearing and then wallets are becoming more ubiquitous. Like, will there be that natural crossover? We hope so, but we're not sure.
It's that's a really fascinating space, right? Because I think, just kind of leaning into the third party world, I think that is the one thing that we are like really hot on the heels of.
I can imagine,
with our clients. And classically, right, we've been talking about this for years, and you know, we've been kind of nudging our clients. By the way. And typically, now that it happened on 4th of January, you know, they dropped off 1%. Everyone's woken up to it, right?
Yeah.
And so literally the last few weeks have been chaos. It's been, look, let's get as many kind of meetings in with our clients. Our clients are coming to us proactively.
Yeah.
We're having conversations with clients around kind of, let's get under the hood of your business. Because I think the thing about third-party cookies is it doesn't just impact paid. It impacts pretty much their whole ecosystem.
Yeah, I can imagine,
And so you need to think about all of those different touch points. And one of the things when you think about kind of what could one of the solutions be, it is around things like kind of wallets. It's around what are those other identifiable pieces of information that we can gather from from our customers. And whether that's their, typically first party data, how they're using, how they're spending, etc. But I think wallets is a really interesting space because obviously we need a lot more people to take that up to make it scalable, right?
I agree, yeah.
But if you do think about it as your personal credit card going around spending as you do, that's really, really powerful information. And as purchasing with crypto becomes more common, that will then give us a brand new light, right? I'm sure there'll be some privacy legislation that will come in and make it much more difficult for us to do that in the future.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Sounds about right. Something bound to come up, but until then, I think that's what we're all looking for. And when we talked about innovation right at the start, I think this is where the real innovation is going to come. It's going to come from how can we be smarter, but much more secure, right? And privacy first with the way that we identify our customers, identify people out there. Then once you move on from the idea of identifying these people, it's then, right, how do you track them back? How do you get that feedback loop? How do you then measure the success of targeting these people? And I think, like we've spoken about this before, I think blockchain has a lot of opportunity. Yeah. I think it's one of those things where because the industry is constantly navigating itself at this point in time, I think it's one of those where you want to kind of get ahead of it, but there's, again, that slight fear factor in, like, God, you don't know what it's going to be next month or the month after, or what new thing could come out. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's fascinating, but that's definitely one of the areas we're looking at as well. Yeah. And campaigns don't really stop. Do you know what I mean? Like there's not a chance to, like, you don't have a winter break like the Premier League or a summer break like the Premier League. You know, it's like you finish the campaign and it's like you probably already planned the next one. So it's like, when do you get a chance to take a breath? And I think, I remember when GDPR rolled out, I was working at Sherrick at the time, and we'd spoken about it and we thought everything was going to be fine. And then it happened. And then, like, overnight, we were just like, okay, well, we can't scale campaigns anymore. It was kind of crazy, really. I hope the same thing doesn't happen again when third parties disappear. But I think sometimes it's like, okay, that might be this happens to everyone. Yeah. There might be a bit less ad spend for a couple of weeks, but it now gives us a chance to really think about what solutions we've been talking about already, which ones can we start testing, which ones are kind of bubbling up in the future. And it's quite a nice chance where we're trying to, like, pull people towards this idea of using blockchain. There's never really been like a push in the way there has been, which cookies is a real, not a nice push, but a push that will exist in that regard. And then also just on, like, a macro level, you've got Bitcoin-based ETFs that are now getting significant inflows of cash. So it's like blockchain is being adopted by the financial mainstream. And I think it may, like, the thing that generally follows that on the next biggest market really is advertising. So like, it will give a nice chance for advertising to follow what traditional financial markets have done and adopt blockchain in a way that can solve a ton of issues that it currently faces. For sure. Yeah. It is a really interesting space, right? And I think the other thing that we're starting to really lean into is how can we facilitate a conversation with the right technology partners, right? And how can we start pushing as agencies, as brands with these technology partners, the Googles, the Apples, people like that, to really help create a much more kind of considered ecosystem for planning, activation, measurement. Because right now, and I think, you know, you mentioned it there, there's so many unknowns when the third-party cookies drop off. Like, I know Apple and Safari have already been there and they've been there for a while. You know, we talk about it being about 30% of the open web market at the moment, which is fair, but 70% is a much bigger hit. Right? And it's a much bigger hit. And especially when things like Google, you know, everyone's searching pretty much through Google, and, you know, we're hearing hints that kind of impression and even click tracking is going to be impacted. Yeah, I can imagine. There's a lot of things here which we just are unsure about. Yeah, and I think that's, again, exactly like you said, we're planning for campaigns today for Christmas. Yeah, right, and they will absolutely be impacted. Crazy, really, and you start thinking about these things, and how can you plan with the right partners, with the right vendors, in the right channels and spaces, without really understanding what impact this is going to have. So I think what we got to do is, it's a little bit of wait and see. It's a little bit of test and learn. And in fact, that's, again, another thing that we're really pushing at Initiative. We've got a very strict kind of energy towards experimentation. Okay, yeah, nice. And we're really, really pushing every single person at Initiative to talk about it with our client, you know, getting learning agendas in place, keeping it simple, keeping it structured, making sure everything tallies up to the business objectives, making sure there's clear hypotheses that you're going after that does drive business growth. Like, these are really, really important things, which, let's be honest, we should have been thinking about this years ago, right? Or every agency and every industry. Though, right? Yeah, we should have been. We should have been. But now the rubber's hitting the road and we need to get moving on it. So there's a big push for that. And I think only through testing these new partners and vendors and solutions and, data points that we can capture through the likes of yourself, will we be able to at least get a little bit more confident. Not we won't be confident, but a little bit more confidence, when that time does happen. Yeah. And it's not far away. I think they're hoping by August, right? Really? And it's going to be a rollout by August, September for it to be done. So it's not going to be end of year. It's going to be by that time. And I think what makes us incredibly nervous is a lot of our brands' peak periods are Christmas and January next year. We've got to have something in place by then. Yeah. Blimey. A lot of work. That sounds like, doesn't it? So I think we kind of mentioned Christmas, but that's a year away still. What would you like to see in like an ideal world happen between now and that period? I guess something to do with cookies by the sounds of it, but Or anything else that we haven't mentioned? Anything else? I've got a lot of excitement about this year. I've got a kind of like fear drives excitement for me, and I'm sure it does for a lot of other people. Like we're in a position today where I think the unknown of where things are going to go, whether it's cookie deprecation, whether it's marketing spend, inflation, right? Kind of market inflation, all these sort of things, right? Is month on month going to have an impact on what we do, right? Okay. So kind of what I would want to see by end of this year is much more collaboration between partners, vendors, brands, technology partners. I want technology partners to be a little bit more, show a bit more humility in what they can and can't do, right? You can all dream, but show a bit more humility. I'd love to see all of us working a little, sound like real like Miss Universe kind of speech here. But everyone kind of working together a lot more better and closer. But fundamentally, that all comes under the idea of test and learns and experimentation, right? I want brands to be more open, to try new things. I think we are really keen to try and educate, as I mentioned before, educate our clients to think a little bit more mid to long term. So, you've got your monthly targets today, but actually when the industry changes this time next year, it's going to be massive different. There's going to be a massive difference in terms of what your business growth looks like tomorrow. So I think to knuckle it down, I think I'd want to see a greater level of education with short and long-term goals. I think I'd like to see greater experimentation and openness. And then finally, a bit more transparency and humility with every partner that's working together. Because I wonder if there's like a bit of technology or a bit of hardware that had the same impact on this market that the mobile device did. Do you know what I mean? Like that was a game changer for businesses like Facebook, Twitter, Uber. The last unicorns really benefited from a device that was in your pocket all the time that you could do whatever you wanted to with on it, And it's like, what is that? Because I was watching videos last night of the first people reviewing the whatever it's called, the Apple Vision Pro, which looks pretty cool. I mean, they're calling it spatial computing. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's machine. I don't know. I wish I knew, but I don't know. I wonder if there's going to be some big advancement in technology somewhere, like AI's threatening to do that. How does that boil itself into a bit of hardware? Because I don't know if you've seen, there's that little lapel pin AI assistant that came around. Like, is it something like that? I don't know, but I think that would be cool. I think it's been a long time. Whenever I get a new iPhone, like by the time you've updated it, you're like, oh, it just feels like the last one. So something like that would be cool. I remember when it was like, I had the Motorola that used to flip and made the DJ noise when it like spun round like, I don't know. So like that, I would like to see. And they're making a comeback, aren't they? And they're making the Razor's back. You can flip it and angrily hang up on someone. But so I think if that's what you want to see, it's probably a difficult question to answer. Like, what do you expect to see happen? And all the lottery numbers, if you know them as well. Look, if I've got them, I'd have them. To be honest with you, right, it's got to be AI driven. It has to be AI driven. In what shape or form or device or hardware that looks like, I'm unsure, because I saw that lapel pin. It's cool, isn't it? Very cool, very cool. But then I also think to myself, are we that lazy to take out our phone and do the same thing? I agree. Then just press that button. You know what I mean? It's that sort of thing. And I think also the thing with the mobile phone, we seem to think it came and took off, which it kind of did, but it's only become ubiquitous in every generation. Kind of in the last, I'd say 10 years. I think that's fair. Right. And so 5 to 10 years. And so it's one of those where I don't think anything will come and just kind of like, smash everything to bits.
Yeah.
It will be a generational push, and it will come from kind of your Gen Zs, Ys, X up. That will be the flow of it. I think it'll also be and typically a confidence thing, right? And I think as more people are becoming more educated with data privacy, there's going to be that kind of pushback. Like you said, I think the beauty of the mobile device is it wasn't just the fact it was a phone in your hand. It was when the smartphone came about, and all of a sudden everyone became more socially kind of linked, right? I think that for me was the big shift. That was when kind of your grandma was on Facebook, right? And everyone was seeing what you're doing, and everyone was becoming much more aware. We were becoming a lot more polarized with our political thoughts and beliefs because of everything you saw through the algorithms that every single social platform serves you. I think that's kind of the follow-on from these big hardware shifts. It's bound to happen with AI. In what shape or form that happens, unknown, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So in terms of what sort of thing is going to change everything, I'm honestly not sure, but I think it's going to come with its obvious pitfalls, with its pushback. I think because we are in a social era of polarizing thoughts and beliefs and whatever, it will become much more tricky to become a ubiquitous tool and technology.
True. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's one of the things that we talk about at Alchemy is that if you return more value to people that are creating content, this is a bit of a tangent, but we've made it this far without one, so I thought I'd throw one in at the end. If you return more value to people that are writing content, there potentially will have to be less polarizing in the way that they write their art. Do you know what I mean? I feel like more money puts people, more people back into the middle, because you don't have to be like, I think Arsenal are rubbish, but I think Arsenal are great. And then I go that way. And then Chelsea fans go to the right, So like, that is really, I guess, our mission, or we hope we can help with this year, is just us to kind of add more value back to the people that are creating the value. And I think often the underserved person in that is like you and I, right? The user of the internet. We do work in ad tech, and that's where a blockchain is quite handy. I mean, we've been talking about this idea that a digital ad market is a intangible asset of some description worth up to $600 billion a year, potentially $1 trillion by 2028. By giving us the chance to contribute to that through a protocol like Alchemy, let's say, we can share in some of the aggregate value that's created rather than the individual value, because that's never been enough of an incentive. It's like, I'm 1/1000th of a CPM. And a CPM is, let's say, $5, that doesn't leave me with very 5,000th of a cent. Takes a lot of 5,000th to get to a one, you know? So like being able to share in the aggregate value, I think is really nice. And that is facilitated really by blockchain, because it's a transparent ledger of exactly what went down. And I think maybe if cookies, it is bad when it goes, like maybe, as kind of you were saying earlier, you do go back to a more traditional way of buying media. It's like, okay, I'm just going to buy the ad units on this website because our audience goes there, and great, that maybe that does make sense. But then we can all share in more of the values. Then there's more. Do you know what I mean? And then there's fewer ads. They work a bit better, and you get to the I've lost my cat story. No.
I completely agree with that, actually, and I think that's what fundamentally we as consumers, people who work in ad tech, people who work in advertising want, is just a much more kind of value-based kind of ecosystem, right? Where from content right through to impression, right through to conversion is offering value at every point. And not monetary value, not always monetary value, but real personal value, right? And I think blockchain absolutely is going to be a facilitator in that. In what shape or form that kind of manifests itself, I'm unsure. You're probably a lot closer to that than I am, or have kind of bigger thoughts about where that could go than I have. But I think for me, it's like you said, I think the fear of third-party deprecation is going to open up lots of opportunity, right?
Totally agree.
It's going to open up opportunity for, if we talk about contextual, right? So exactly like you mentioned there, we're going to go to a place where somebody's reading an article on X, and therefore let's serve them an ad. But then you get the other complexities. What angle is that piece of content being written in? Is that is it much more conservative? Is it a little bit more kind of aggressive? Should we be, as a brand, be seen on those sort of sites? Is it true? Yeah. You start opening up a whole bunch of other challenges, which, as when you buy programmatically, you can't see at all times, right? And that's where, again, you almost take a step back again and start working directly with the Guardians or the Telegraphs or these sort of people to say, here is our kind of exclusion list in terms of keywords, places we don't want to be. And it can, like I said, the fear can open up opportunity, but we're just going to be facing different challenges. And it's in the same way that kind of we talk about AI, right? AI going to be the place that, AI is going to take people's jobs, right? That whole fear. But it also opens up opportunity for people to learn new skills and to step in new spaces and optimize their time more efficiently so they can do smarter, more, value-based work. So I think for me, you're absolutely right. Where it goes, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't think anyone does. And if they did, they'd be on a massive yacht somewhere just sipping martinis, right? But
they would.
They would. But I think it's the unexpected that's driving a lot of excitement from all of us. Everyone in ad tech's very excited at the moment. Yeah, and it just kind of gives an excuse for people to take a risk, because if it goes badly now, how much worse can it go if you try something new? There's the potential to go better, know. And I think it's rare, on your point on AI, that a new technology kind of exclusively removes jobs, like as you said, it kind of equally creates new types of jobs that weren't possible without this bit of technology, So I think it's going to be an interesting year. I feel like we finally got out of the year of the mobile now. Maybe we're in the 5th year of the year of the cookie or something like that. Let's hope the blockchain.
Fingers crossed. Sherrick, that was brilliant. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Thank you for joining us. And we'll have you on anytime you want, mate. That was awesome.
Brilliant.
Cheers.
Appreciate it. Thank you
very much.
Cheers.